Hey y'all, it's Erica. I'm here today to do a review of Alice Munro's collection of short stories called Dear Life. This is the first collection of short stories I've read by Alice Munro, and I've heard so many great things about her. If you don't know, she is a Canadian author. She is getting quite on in years now. I think she was born in the early 30s. She has won a Nobel Prize and the Man Booker and all sorts of amazing things. This collection was published in 2012, but a lot of the stories had been previously published in some very renowned publications such as The New Yorker and Harper's Bazaar. So they eventually collected them all, which I think is remarkable because even that I haven't read anything else from her, so I don't know if all of her stories are like this. But they had so many similarities that it's really insane to me that that this wasn't planned, like that she didn't, and maybe she had the whole time, I don't know, but because they were published at different times in different publications, it doesn't seem like she was initially planning to collect these all together, but they're absolutely stunning. Like, I can't even talk about them coherently because I'm so blown away. So let's talk about this book. I haven't scripted this review at all, so we're just gonna go bananas on this, I guess. What am I saying? This is a collection of 14 stories, and the first 10 are just general fiction stories, and the last 4 in the collection are actually autobiographical, and she has a little note in here. Let's see if I can find it. She says, "The final 4 works in this book are not quite stories. They form a separate unit, one that is autobiographical in feeling, though not sometimes entirely so in fact. I believe they are the first and last and the closest things I have to say about my own life." So she doesn't usually write like memoir style stories. She doesn't usually write about herself. But you can tell that she draws a lot on her own life experience. And I'm glad I started with this collection because I know she has way more famous collections. Lives of Girls and Women is one. The Beggar Maid. I mean, she has so many collections. But I'm glad I started here because I liked that glimpse into her own life, because now I can see in her stories how she draws kind of from personal experience. So while I was reading this, I was for sure it was going to be a 4-star read. I was like, these stories are great, but they weren't really like tugging at me. Like, I don't know, to give a book 5 stars, like I have to close it and just want to like stare at a wall and think about it for a couple of days. And once I hit the end of this book, I did that. I like closed it and I looked at it and I was like, oh my God, this woman is brilliant. So the stories are kind of similar in theme. They're not interconnected at all. They're all about different characters, but they're all very quiet stories, mostly set in small Canadian towns near or around Toronto. I'm not very familiar with Canadian geography, so forgive me. I've never been to Canada. Actually, I think that's a lie. I think I've ridden through Canada on a trip from upstate New York to Michigan once. But I've never visited Canada or like stayed there, so. But yeah, they're very quiet stories. They're very quiet stories about people's everyday lives. And there are some reoccurring themes in the stories. A lot of them take place around World War II. And they're not necessarily like World War II stories. They're not war stories. But a lot of them have this vein that runs through them about how World War II affected the lives of people living in small towns in Canada at the time. And so you'll see soldiers coming back from war. There's a lot of people talking about like rationing and stuff during the war and how the economy changed throughout the war. But that's not what this book is necessarily about. This book is really about people's lives and how even in the quietest of places, you can find heartbreak and betrayal and tragedy. And, you know, even in those little sleepy towns, there's still so much beneath the surface, and people are still grasping with really big emotional issues. And I really, really loved that. And her language is beautiful. Alice Munro's language, it's not over the top. It doesn't try to be showy, but it's just very simple and very hard hitting. And there's such a good rhythm to it. Like, I never felt like I was being rushed along, but at the same time, it never dragged for me. It was just this good, steady feeling that she brings with her style and her prose. And I love that her language really complemented the subject matter of these stories because they're set in such quiet little places and it's such ordinary people, but there's just a steadiness to the whole thing. I can't explain it. It's so good. And a couple other things real quick that I really liked about this collection. There were a couple of stories, and I don't know if it's because I missed it, but I did go back and look for it, where the narrators were completely gender neutral, and I had no idea if the narrator was a man or female. And I really admire an author who can do that and bring such a universal perspective to a story. Through a few of them, quite a handful of them, there's this theme of adultery and this theme of being unfaithful. And she presents these themes in such a straightforward and eloquent manner. She's not preachy about it. She's just like, this happens. And it happens, and people move on. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. It doesn't matter. Like, it just happens. I had some definite favorites in this collection, but really they were all great. There wasn't a single story that I was like, okay. I mean, they were all, if I rated them individually, they would all be 4 or 5 star reads for me. And that's what pushed this book over the edge. And the last sentence of the last story of this book, like, hit me so hard. And I'm not going to read it to you because I feel like it's better left. It's not a spoiler or anything, but I feel like it's one of those moments in literature that is so hard hitting that it's best not to know that it's coming. And that's why I think I liked it so much. So, yeah, I highly recommend this collection. I highly recommend checking out Alice Munro. I'm definitely looking forward in 2015 to reading a lot more of her short stories because, honestly, she's up there with Flannery O'Connor for me right now. And obviously, they write in different styles. Flannery O'Connor, Southern Gothic. But they do the same kind of things for me where they just talk about these normal people who live seemingly unremarkable lives that are in actuality are remarkable. And it was so good. It was so good. Totally blown away by this collection. Definitely recommend it. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.